You know that old saying, the best camera is the one that's on you? Well, now thanks to these guys, we have a camera in our pocket or close by at all times. And these things today are actually really powerful tools. What they lack in sensor size, they make up for in computation or software. So in today's video, I want to share with you a few tips and tricks utilizing the software and taking control of it when it isn't working in your favor. My name is Jesse, and I am a professional photographer living and working in Los Angeles. Let's jump into our phone with tip number one. Now, this came up on set the other day. One of the model's assistants was trying to take a behind-the-scenes photo of her, and she had an interesting lighting situation. So the auto exposure on these cameras is really great. It has HDR mode, it shifts back and forth really quickly, but this particular lighting scenario was just different. She was sitting in the makeup chair. There was makeup lights on her, and then there was a window behind her, so it was a backlit scene. She was struggling taking photos of this backlit scene, so I jumped in and showed her this trick. You press on your screen, and then a little box comes out. There's a sun next to it. You slide your finger up, and the exposure goes up, and then you slide your finger down, and the exposure goes down. So simple. It's a game changer. You are taking control of your auto exposure. Now, if you want to lock it in place and take a bunch of photos without it keep adjusting, that happens all the time. You just press on your screen and hold, and then it'll go into auto exposure lock and auto focus lock. You can still adjust the exposure by sliding your finger up to get brighter, down to get darker. So moving into tip number two, and this has to do with your portrait mode. Now, with a DSLR or mirrorless camera, they have detachable lenses that have apertures in them. The aperture is what determines the amount of blur in the photo. So if you have your aperture wide open, you let in a lot of light, and you have a small depth of field. That is what makes the background blurry. Whatever's in focus is sharp, and whatever is in the background is blurry. The larger the aperture number, the more it's closed down, the more things in the frame will be in focus. This is called your f-stop. That's the measurement that you use. So if you look on your portrait mode on your screen, you see a little F on the top of the screen. Now, you press on that, there's a little menu at the bottom. You can slide it to the right and to the left. So this is just the software mimicking what a detachable lens will do, what your aperture will do. It's by sliding it left and right, it doesn't actually change your exposure, it just changes the amount of blur. It's copying what a DSLR would do. So the smaller the f-stop, or the smaller the number, I should say, that would be a larger f-stop, the more blur that you'll have. So this is cool if you are trying to hide something in the background. If it's just like you're in the middle of a crazy environment and you just want your subject to stand out the most that it can. The opposite is the higher the f-stop or the larger the number, the less blurry it is. So if you were trying to take a portrait but you wanted to include some of the background, you wanted to make it less blurry. I know one of my friends, when she first got a iPhone 11 Pro, I think, she was like, I hate portrait mode, it's way too blurry. And I was like, well, you know that's adjustable. So you are just gonna take control over your portrait mode. What's in focus, how you tell your story is all up to you, and it's all through using the software to your advantage. Tip number three is going back into your photo mode, and if you look in the same spot that the f-stop is, you have live mode. I know my mom uses live mode all the time. I don't think her phone ever comes out of live mode. It's kind of cool because when she sends me a photo, I can press on it and see a 3-second video surrounding the scene, so I get a little bit more information than I would if it was just one frame. But that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about once you take your photo, you click on your photo, and then you can swipe up and you get 4 different options. One is the live, the 3-second video. The second one is a loop, so it just puts your video into a loop. And then the third one is, it's almost like a boomerang. It's a bounce. It's not as clean as boomerang, and it's not really as controllable, but it still is fun sometimes. And then the fourth one is what I want to talk about, and that's your long exposure. So you've seen those like landscape photos that people take where it's a river and the water's all milky and smooth. That's done by using a long exposure. So what that is on a DSLR or a mirrorless, you have a shutter, and if you open it for a long time, everything that's moving in the frame will start to get blurry, and everything that is just static will be sharp. So the same thing happens in your live mode. If you are shooting and your camera is completely still, the things that are not moving will be sharp, and then the things that are moving will be blurry. This is cool for at night if you want to blur like lights of a car, or if you're out in the woods or something and you're near a stream and you want to blur out the water like the landscape photographers, or if you're at the beach and you want to show movement and waves. I think those are 3 examples of how to use this. I'm constantly looking for times that I can use it. I don't use it that often, but when I see something that's moving that I want to kind of blur, I definitely pop my phone into live mode. And this takes me to tip number 4, and that is using these guys, our lenses. Now, in my photography kit, I have a bunch of different lenses, and they have a bunch of different focal lengths and lots of different uses. So one of my favorite lenses is a 24 millimeter. What this lens does, if you're working with people, it can stretch them out. If you work at a low angle, it makes their legs really long and makes them a little bit thinner. A lot of my female clients like this look, and on these cameras, the wide angle lens is actually 28 millimeters, so it's just above my favorite, and the ultra wide actually is what they call it, is 13 millimeters. So if you have used this, you know at 13, when you're shooting portraits or something, it just makes people look absolutely crazy and have super long legs or distorted noses or whatever. I know that some people might like this look, and it's all a matter of taste. So I love the 24 look and I use it. So basically, if you just zoom your camera out, you go into 0.8, and that's equivalent to 24 millimeter. But I would encourage you to just experiment, find your favorite focal length, use different angles, instead of always going low, sometimes go high. It makes some of the facial features bigger, like eyes and stuff like that. We have this powerful tool at our disposal, and just learning some different ways to use it and how to control all of its functions will help you to create interesting images, and then maybe pause and be a little bit more intentional with our photographs. I know when I'm on a job using my professional gear, I put a lot of thought into each image and what my settings are going to be, and I've probably taken most of the photos in my portfolio 100 times in my mind before I actually turned on the camera. So that's it for this video. Press like if you like photography, subscribe if you want more videos on photography, and I will see you in the next video.